Do you know why humans are unable to practice immortal cultivation? It's because Earth belongs to the highest plane in the universe, which imposes 500,000 layers of law suppression on humans. Especially for the Huaxia people, who, due to their imperial dragon bloodline, have as many as 1 million internal restrictions. However, this has led to a problem. After Roaingsky traveled through, he discovered that things here couldn't even withstand his mere presence. Even the so-called strongest supreme system begged to become his slave, but Roaingsky couldn't care less. He just wants to lie flat as much as possible. After all, his wife is the empress of the current dynasty, who almost never refuses his requests. With such a powerful backing, why would he need to work hard? It turns out that the empress had been constantly pressured by various ministers to marry. To avoid being coerced by them, she actually resorted to forbidden magic. She intended to summon a puppet husband. Meanwhile, Roaingsky was facing betrayal from his subordinates at that time. As a top assassin in Huaxia, he would never tolerate such an act. He immediately set out to purge the traitors. And as the battle reached its climax, Roaingsky was forcibly teleported over. At that moment he was completely bewildered. Just moments ago he was being surrounded and attacked, and now he suddenly found himself here. He looked at the stunningly beautiful woman, Roaingsky, who appeared calm and composed before him, and immediately guessed that she must be involved in this matter. He wanted to ask for an explanation, while Empress merely let out a soft sigh, because she saw not a trace of cultivation level in Roaingsky, which left her somewhat disappointed. However, this makes him easier to control. At this thought, the Empress explained the situation to him, asking him to be her husband in name only. Unexpectedly, Roaingsky was overjoyed upon hearing this. He eagerly urged to consummate the marriage. But the Empress didn't hesitate to pour cold water on him, telling him not to even think about marital relations. However, I will try my best to fulfill your other requests. Roaingsky, however, was unfazed by this. The thought of never having to worry about food and clothing again filled him with excitement. He no longer had to live on the edge like he did in his previous life. And just as he was lost in his thoughts, a notification sound suddenly rang out. Whether to send the strongest supreme system. In my previous life I was constantly forced to carry out various assassinations. In this life I finally have the chance to take it easy, yet this system still tries to trick me into working. Even a dog wouldn't want it. Watching Roaingsky actually dare to refuse. The system is actually preparing to eliminate him and find a new host. But at this moment the system noticed something unusual. Elimination failed. Detachment from the target failed. Force binding failed. Acknowledgement of ownership failed. The system was now in a panic. Upon detection, it found that Roaingsky actually originated from Earth in the Supreme Realm. To survive, the system had no choice but to activate the slave parasitic mode, yet it still failed. After 9,999 attempts, the system had exhausted all its tricks. To save its life, the system had no choice but to beg Roaingsky to take it in as a slave. And Roaingsky, seeing its sincerity, reluctantly agreed. He then named the system Ricky. After receiving the name, Ricky pleaded with Roaingsky to restrain his aura, as it could unintentionally erase him. It turns out that Roaingsky, as a descendant of Huaxia, continuously absorbs the energy of heaven and earth in this lower realm, gradually restoring the power that the Huaxia people rightfully possess. If he doesn't control his aura, the surrounding things simply can't withstand it. Roaingsky didn't want to lose the new subordinate he had just recruited, so he decisively suppressed his aura. Moreover, it was from Ricky that Roaingsky learned, the rule suppression in this realm is only 3,000. I am an existence that crushes everything here. At the same time, Roaingsky also noticed that his body had begun to change. First of all, he became invulnerable. Even the royal family's top-tier weapons couldn't harm him in the slightest. However, he himself had grown weary of killing. In this life, he will no longer resort to force casually. However, upon waking up, Roaingsky felt he was doomed. Could it be that I'm no longer pure? The Empress was speechless seeing him like this. Did I actually benefit from this? She had no choice but to tell him that, in order to silence the gossip, she would occasionally come to sleep over. But don't even think about anything else. However, as a gesture of apology, I will try my best to accommodate you in other aspects. Haha, Roaingsky doesn't care at all. This is what you call the ideal life. He can finally lie flat without any pretense. But he never expected that in just 2 days, the Empress would personally lead the charge. Because the Empress received a secret report. The northern barbarians have rebelled, and it appears someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes. To stabilize the situation, the Empress must personally lead the campaign to quell the rebellion. Meanwhile, to prevent anyone from taking the opportunity to harm Roaingsky, she actually arranged for Little Zero, the top prodigy of Great Yin, to protect him in secret. This also made her close associates extremely dissatisfied, thinking, is it really necessary to go to such lengths for a mere good-for-nothing? However, the Empress held a different view, for after marrying Roaingsky, not only did the court stabilize, but her own cultivation level also improved. He was clearly her lucky charm. Roaingsky had no idea what they were thinking. After the Empress left, he began living a life of luxury and indulgence. And his actions successfully provoked Little Zero's resentment. Your Majesty is fighting for the country, yet this guy is here enjoying roast suckling pig. Just as she was inwardly complaining incessantly, suddenly, a wave of killing intent swept over. When she looked over, Roaingsky had already been kidnapped. This useless one really doesn't let anyone rest easy. And just as she was worrying, Roaingsky, who was caught, was still leisurely eating barbecue. He didn't want to reveal his strength, otherwise he would definitely be forced to work again. Looking at his simple-minded appearance, the masked man began to doubt if he had captured the wrong person. This guy didn't seem at all like the Empress's man. Even Little Zero couldn't stand watching anymore. Is this guy an idiot or what? However, it was, after all, the Empress's decree. Little Zero didn't want to offend the royal family because of him. But when she rushed in front of Roaingsky calmly told her to leave. It was then that Little Zero realized she had fallen into a trap. Golden chains instantly surrounded her tightly. After all, she is the favored daughter of the Great Yin Empire, so of course some tactics must be employed. Little Zero didn't want to bother with these petty people, so she prepared to gather strength to break the shackles. However, the opponent sneered coldly. This formation is specially designed to counter your defense-shattering slash. Upon hearing this, Little Zero immediately felt a tightness in his heart. The opponent actually knew him so well. And when this person removed the mask, Little Zero finally got excited. This guy actually didn't die? She had personally killed him back then. Watching them argue back and forth, Roaingsky was thoroughly enjoying the drama and the gossip. After finishing, he stood up and said, "You guys keep chatting, I'm heading off now." But seeing him act so arrogantly, Scarface couldn't stand it anymore. For a useless person, you've got some nerve. You may leave, but you must dissolve this pill in the Empress's drinking water. Alright, no problem. Roaingsky's move left the scar-faced man completely bewildered. However, anyone can talk big. This is the top-tier crimson crane poison. But before he could finish speaking, the medicine in his hand had vanished without a trace. Under his astonished gaze, Roaingsky had already swallowed the medicine. Can I leave now? The bewildered Scarface was even more confused now. What's going on? It's the first time he's seen someone so cooperative. What should he say next? Roaingsky didn't care what he thought. He just wanted to hurry back and be his carefree royal prince. And Little Zero, who had been watching from the side, couldn't take it anymore. You spineless good-for-nothing. His Majesty must have been blind to choose you as a husband. This is what they call the wise adapt to circumstances. This kid clearly has potential. Do you think everyone is as foolish as you? Seeing him act so arrogantly made Roaingsky feel extremely displeased. I've been so cooperative. Can I take her with me now? Get lost. I don't need your fake kindness. At this moment, Little Zero wished she could personally take down this cowardly man. Scarface unexpectedly sided with Little Zero at this moment. I have personal scores to settle with her too. She's not going anywhere today. Watching their coordinated act, Roaingsky felt utterly speechless. With her unique status, detaining her here would only tip our hand prematurely. At this moment, Roaingsky still wanted to persuade these people to use their brains. But the reckless cannon fodder nearby couldn't wait any longer. Don't push your luck. The guy grabbed Roaingsky by the hair without hesitation. What a tough nut to crack. Linger watched with overwhelming anxiety, knowing that an ordinary person like him would surely die if hit by that move. Yet the next moment, all they heard was Roaingsky letting out a yawn. Immediately, his face darkened. Do you have any idea how much I hate it when people touch my hair? And as his aura shifted, the people around him immediately felt a chill run down their spines. Because from this good-for-nothing, they sensed an unusual, oppressive force. Yet he merely threw a light punch. The power it unleashed already surpassed everyone's understanding. What kind of being have we captured? But before they could regret it, Roaingsky casually sent them to meet their maker. The boss who was just arrogant moments ago. Now he can only kneel and beg for mercy. But he has already witnessed Roaingsky's true power. This is also something Roaingsky absolutely cannot allow, lest others find out. How else could he continue to live off his wife's earnings? Meanwhile, the favored daughter, who saw everything clearly, felt her worldview shatter. Seeing Roaingsky look her way, she quickly apologized for the earlier insult, nodding like a chicken pecking at rice. However, in the next moment, countless fragments of light shimmered around her. What kind of power is this? He actually crushed the strongest formation with his bare hands. However, Roaingsky couldn't be bothered to care about what she thought. He vanished from the spot in the blink of an eye. Little Zero finally seized the chance to breathe a sigh of relief, but the next moment, she witnessed a scene she would never forget for the rest of her life. Two great mountains hopped and bounced, then flew up into the air. Haha, luckily it's just a mountain, not the royal prince. Wait, a mountain? What the heck? What kind of monster is he, anyway? Could it be that his strength has already surpassed the 10th layer sacred stage? Before she could even finish marveling at the thought, the violent impact sent a numbing shock through her entire body. He saw the mountain completely bury the cave that was there just moments before. Roaingsky nodded in satisfaction. Now there was no trace of his intervention left to see, and Little Zero finally understood what true corpse disposal really meant. However, the reason Roaingsky spared Little Zero was precisely to shift all the credit onto her. Seeing her still hesitate, he couldn't believe her audacity. Roaingsky unleashed his killing intent without hesitation. This frightened Little Zero so much that he immediately knelt down. She promised to follow his every command, and Roaingsky was quite satisfied with her attitude. At that moment there was also movement in the woods. It was the guards assigned to protect her who had found their way. Seeing Roaingsky yawn, Little Zero immediately understood the hint. She quickly claimed all the credit, stating that she had already eliminated the thief. Since Roaingsky was seen as a good-for-nothing in everyone's eyes, they had no choice but to believe it. Seeing how smoothly things had gone, Roaingsky decided to go back to his carefree life. However, the guards dared not let him have his way. If he were to be captured again, they would have no way to explain it. To put their minds at ease, Roaingsky said leisurely, "The little girl has already slain the bandits. You can rest assured." Unexpectedly, his words had the opposite effect, frightening the guards badly. The royal prince is finished, they thought. The last person who dared to call him Little Zero now has grass growing 3 feet high over their grave. However, Little Zero not only pretended not to hear but even happily followed the royal prince. And what happened next left them utterly astonished. The proud young general actually bowed and scraped to the good-for-nothing royal prince. It's practically like treating oneself as a servant girl. Oh no, the young general must have gone completely off the rails. What they didn't know was that Roaingsky had been silently absorbing the vital essence of heaven and earth all along. Now, he had already become a clairaudient. Their gossip held no interest for Roaingsky. But what they said next truly startled Roaingsky. It turned out that they deduced the kidnappers came from the notorious Blood Cloud Tower. The kidnappers abducted the royal prince. He did it to control the empress. After this failure, he will surely send more people within 7 days. Seeing the royal prince was quite frightened by their conversation, the guard suggested that he hide in the palace. Haha, that's indeed a brilliant idea. Roaingsky couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. His action also made the guards despise him even more. He really is a coward. Fortunately, Roaingsky didn't mind and instead asked Little Zero out alone. It turned out that he had overheard the guards saying that the common people would suffer, so he wanted to ask for the reason behind it. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, Little Zero immediately gritted his teeth in anger. Because, according to the ways of the Blood Cloud Tower, after a mission fails, they would slaughter the common people to force the Empress into paying them protection money. This kind of thing has happened more than once or twice. Upon hearing this, Roaingsky was immediately enraged. These scumbags! What made it even more unacceptable to him was that if the Blood Cloud Tower targeted the common people, he would be trapped in a hopeless situation. Because if he took action himself, it would expose his true strength, and he would inevitably end up becoming the Empress's laborer, forever losing any chance of a laid-back life. However, if he refrains from taking action, he will be looked down upon by the Empress and might even be divorced as a result. Roaingsky will never allow either of these scenarios to happen. Blood Cloud Tower, huh? I'm going to destroy it right now. Seeing Roaingsky finally ready to take action, Little Zero was happy but couldn't help feeling worried. The Blood Cloud Tower is protected by formations and has numerous branches. Even the Great Yin Empire has been unable to locate its branch within their territory for many years. However, this is a piece of cake for Roaingsky. After all, he still has a loyal slave, Ricky. After confirming that no one was around, Roaingsky held Little Zero and soared into the sky. He relied solely on his physical strength to fly at supersonic speeds through the air. Even Ricky urged him to slow down immediately, or Little Zero would truly be reduced to nothing. And the reason he was in such a hurry was to eliminate the root of the problem and destroy the bandit's stronghold, the Blood Cloud Tower. Suddenly Roaingsky stopped in the clouds, arrived just as Little Zero was at a loss. Roaingsky had already clenched his iron fist. He threw a powerful punch in one swift motion, instantly shattering the entire space. And an aerial island emerged along with it. Even the well-traveled Little Zero couldn't help but marvel at the grand scale of the Blood Cloud Tower, exclaiming how even its branch in Great Yin was so luxurious. Just as she was about to sneak in, Roaingsky had already taken off into the air. He kicked the door wide open, shattering it to pieces. And from within the hall, the auras of countless powerful figures surged toward him. Damn, she couldn't even defeat the weakest one herself. At this moment, the innkeeper, sensing his hostile intent, wanted to inquire about the reason. But the next second, she turned into flying ashes. TSK villains always die because they talk too much. However, the commotion caused by Roaingsky also drew the island's strongest experts here. And Little Zero recognized them. They were all top assassins from the Blood Cloud Tower. Their gathering here must have some hidden agenda. At this moment, Ricky, who had been trying to make his presence known, quickly stepped forward and provided Roaingsky with the identities of the individuals. However, Roaingsky had no interest in the dead. Surprisingly, this person actually recognized the two of them, and was even discussing how to have some fun with them. Meanwhile, Roaingsky and his group were completely disregarded by them. Because according to the undercover's intelligence, this royal prince is nothing but a useless person. The commotion must have been caused by Little Zero. But in the next second, their eyes widened in disbelief. Because Roaingsky, with just one glance, an aura of terror instantly swept across the entire island. And the people on the island were all overwhelmed, their heads splitting with pain. This moment, at last, they realized that the seemingly useless royal prince before them was actually terrifyingly powerful. And Roaingsky couldn't be bothered to argue. He just wanted to be a kept man. Why are you bothering me? Forcing me to wipe you all out with a single punch. His terrifying punch tore through the sky. At this moment, the surviving assassin had already cursed the intelligence department's ancestors 18 generations over in his mind. You call this kind of monster a waste? What were you thinking? Meanwhile, the person in question pulled Little Zero up with a speechless expression saying, "And you call yourself a first-day prodigy? You're way too weak." Little Zero was also frustrated, thinking, "It's just that this guy's strength is ridiculously overpowered, isn't it?" Before she could even express her admiration, Roaingsky blasted open another door with a single punch. He gazed at the piles of gold, silver, and treasures scattered all over the floor. Roaingsky immediately revealed his true treasure-obsessed nature. This left Little Zero utterly speechless. And Roaingsky's reason was even more absurd. He had spent so much time destroying the Blood Cloud Tower, so taking a little compensation for his efforts was only natural, right? In the blink of an eye, Ricky helped Roaingsky sweep away all the treasures. Little Zero dared not utter a single word of objection on the side. But the next second, Roaingsky crushed a piece of jade and threw the shimmering light from it towards Little Zero. This is a 7th-layer defense talisman. The royal prince actually used such a precious item on himself. Could it be? Just as Little Zero was lost in thought, Roaingsky then calmly told her that he was worried her body wouldn't be able to withstand it later. Since the headquarters of Blood Cloud Tower is quite far away, I need to accelerate my flight. After saying that, he scooped Little Zero up into his arms again. Amidst a clap of thunder, Roaingsky was as fast as lightning. Even this defensive talisman showed faint signs of shattering. Fortunately, Roaingsky located the position the very next moment. And their island protection barrier was as fragile as paper, offering no resistance at all. Watching their sudden visit, countless assassins instantly surrounded them from all sides. How strange, someone actually seeks death by coming to our Blood Cloud Tower. Judging by the aura of these two individuals, Little Zero froze in an instant, so powerful. However, an even stronger aura forced her to lift her head with difficulty. As this person landed on the ground, the surrounding assassins all knelt down in unison to greet him. Little Zero knew that this was the master of the Blood Cloud Tower, also the current king of assassins, Yun Zuanlai. This piqued Roaingsky's interest. He wanted to see just how capable this man, who shared the same title as his past life, really was. Meanwhile, Yoon Zuanlai demonstrated remarkable observational skills, immediately recognizing that Roaingsky was no ordinary individual. However, in his eyes, that was all there was to it. He must have relied on some secret treasure to break through his family's formation. At this moment, the man who had just spoken could no longer sit still, and decided to personally engage with Roaingsky for a bit of fun. Little Zero was still a bit worried and reminded Roaingsky that Deputy Tower Master Huang Feng particularly enjoyed performing craniotomies on people. But Roaingsky didn't care. He had already scanned that there were over 100 people on the island, and not a single one would escape later. Seeing his arrogant attitude, Huang Feng's killing intent grew even stronger. He immediately sought permission from Yoon Zuanlai to take more extreme measures, offering to cover the medical expenses from his own bounty. Yoon Zuanlai had no reason to refuse this request. He only needed the target alive and capable of threatening the Empress. After receiving approval, Huang Feng didn't rush to act. Instead, he took the time to study Roaingsky's appearance. Sure enough, you're just a pretty boy. I can't stand effeminate guys like you. Hearing his words, Roaingsky played along and even told him to aim for his forehead. This bizarre request stunned even the well-experienced assassins. Roaingsky, who had no patience for such dawdling, immediately intensified his assault. He hit the nail on the head. He indeed succeeded in provoking Huang Feng. But just as he struck squarely on the face, everyone at the Blood Cloud Tower was stunned. This trash actually blocked the Deputy Tower Master's powerful strike with just one finger. What's wrong? Did you skip a meal? Enraged, Huang Feng had long forgotten the need to keep anyone alive and swung his massive fist with all his lifelong strength. But he was still stopped by Roaingsky with just one finger. The shockwave from this punch was so powerful that even Little Zero couldn't keep his footing. What's the matter? Should I let you have a bite to eat first? Huang Feng had never suffered such humiliation before. Under the combined effects of fear and rage, his attacks had lost all sense of order. Unaware that his hands were bleeding from the impact, he continued. Yet, he still couldn't even break a single finger of Roaingsky. After he fell to the ground, Roaingsky continued to mock. Is your playstyle that unique? You're almost knocking yourself out. Humiliated, Huang Feng could only shed silent tears, thinking, what kind of monster is this? Roaingsky was also left speechless by the sight. Are all these assassins idiots? He thought. Don't they even consider what it means that they could find this? Seizing the opportunity, Ricky immediately chimed in, explaining to Roaingsky that because his body was still continuously growing and strengthening, he was unable to cultivate. As a result, in the perception of others, he appeared to be just an ordinary person without a stage. Before Roaingsky could continue his complaints, branches of the Blood Cloud Tower from other islands sensed the commotion and hurried over one after another. This suited Roaingsky perfectly. He wouldn't have to search for them one by one. Amid the friction of the punches, countless flames shot out, yet all the attacks veered away from the sand hands surrounding him. He directly destroyed the distant Blood Cloud Tower branch. These people had never witnessed such a scene before. In an instant, they were so terrified that they vanished without a trace. At this moment, scattering and fleeing was their only hope for survival. However, upon seeing this, Huang Feng once again revealed a smug expression. No matter how powerful you are, you can't stop all dozens of us assassins at once. As long as one of us survives, the intelligence will be passed on. He refused to believe that Xiao Tian alone could stop dozens of assassins scattering in all directions at once. But Xiao Tian proved him wrong with action, forcing him to believe. In an instant, Xiao Tian moved swiftly. He vanished from his spot in an instant, yet the next moment dozens of Xiao Tians appeared. Simultaneously, they appeared before each of the Blood Cloud Tower assassins, and bursts of blood mist exploded. Piercing through the suspended figures of Xiao Tian, these dozens of Xiao Tians were all afterimages left behind by his ultra-high-speed movements. Witnessing this scene, Huang Feng couldn't believe his eyes. A surge of blood rushed up his throat, and with his last breath cut short, he fell silent forever. At that moment, the female assassin from afar, with a flattering expression, pressed herself close to Xiao Tian. My lord, your divine prowess is truly unmatched, she cooed. I can't help but admire you. Would you spare my life so I may serve by your side? The other party's actions and words caused Little Zero, who was propping himself up with his longsword, to change his expression. He now knew who this female assassin was. He had heard about her from his mother. Heart-devouring Princess Yu Yan was skilled at seducing men with her charms, ultimately manipulating them into complete submission. Little Zero was quite worried about whether the royal prince could resist such a lure. Yet, to her surprise, an unexpected scene unfolded. Xiao Tian watched as Yu Yan leaned in closer, but with a surge of inner energy he forced her back. "You woman, what a vicious scheme you have," he exclaimed. Seeing Xiao Tian's terrifying expression, Yu Yan trembled and said, "My lord, what are you talking about?" She was even more bewildered inside, wondering if her charm had lost its effect. Xiao Tian, however, stared intently at Yu Yan with a stern expression. "You begging for mercy is one thing, but saying you want to serve me, how would the Empress see me then? She might misunderstand and think I lead a promiscuous life. If she were to divorce me over this, how could I continue being the carefree royal prince?" Xiao Tian grew more agitated as he spoke, pointing at Yu Yan and shouting, "How malicious your thoughts are! You're a terrifying person. I cannot let you stay." After saying this, Xiao Tian struck with a palm, instantly shattering Yu Yan's heart meridian, bones, and tendons. Then Xiao Tian turned to Little Zero, who was standing there dumbfounded, and explained with a serious expression, "I didn't hold back because I was afraid people might misunderstand and think I had a guilty conscience. Little girl, you bear witness. If this ever comes to light, you can vouch for me. I truly have remained chaste for His Majesty." Yu Yan's beautiful eyes glared fiercely at Xiao Tian. She opened her mouth and cursed him as an idiot, then her eyes rolled back and she collapsed dead from sheer rage. Xiao Tian wasn't angered. Instead, he shook his head disdainfully. "See? Her scheme exposed, she's just throwing a tantrum out of shame." Little Zero's face darkened as she cautiously inquired, "Your Highness, might you be mistaken?" "You don't understand." Xiao Tian shook his head and let out a long sigh. "I've seen plenty of people like this in my past life. They're definitely up to no good."